So we're going to talk about open source authenticity, and I'm going to explain what that means. But before I get into that, I want to talk about who Sarah and I are, and actually we have kind of the full crew here. So I want to talk about who Connection Core is to the world, what the point of us existing is. We believe that we are onto something. Like, we believe that we have a way of relating to people that could change the world if everybody were to relate that way to one another all the time. And so we have kind of a three-stage vision of training ourselves to the highest degree that we possibly can to show up fully in the ways that we think are beneficial. Learning how to train other people, sort of transmit from person to person to hopefully that same degree of mastery. And then stage 3, our big, hairy, audacious plan is to change the world, to actually know the ideas well enough to create something that's infectious, something that spreads culturally around the globe. And we believe that if that were the case, then huge swaths of major issues would just evaporate overnight. I mean, imagine if everyone in Congress were operating with this kind of mindset, or everyone in the education system, or everybody who was working in like crisis not-for-profits. The world would change very, very quickly. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're at stage 2 right now, in that stage, figuring out how best to, and it's iterative, let me be clear about that, but we're figuring out how best to transmit it to individuals. But at the same time, it's not going to be enough. We can run workshops every weekend for the rest of our lives and have a cute little impact on the world, but not the kind of global shift that we really think is necessary. And so that's what we're talking about here, is sort of the beginning of how can we collaborate such that we can make a radical impact on the world. Cool? Mm-hmm. Awesome. Do you have anything to add to that, Sarah?
Just a little bit more about what we'll actually be doing, like in this talk. So context of what we're doing, but then what is open source in the first place, and why does that work particularly well for this? And what is like authentic relating and circling? Because like a lot of what we're trying to do, and I know that like the Circling Institute and T3 and these other training programs are trying to do, is breaking down like what is it that we do in such a way that we can actually learn to transmit that to other people. And so we've been doing that in our facilitator trainings, and like training facilitators all over the world to lead these games, which are like exercises that take circling and put it into a format that pretty much anybody can take out and use. And that's the benefit that I see to games, like they don't always go as deep as circling, but they're very instantly applicable by anybody in any context.
Yeah.
So like, what is authentic relating and circling to us? And then what have we been doing with open source, and what can we do even more of so that going forward, like, we can have this more in the world or by like having kind of not reinventing the wheel all the time, which is what I see happening in a lot of the authentic communities in my conversations with them, that we're running into the same problems again and again.
And nobody's talking to each other about them, they're just resolving them.
Exactly, which is great in one sense, because then there's different creative solutions, but in another sense, it feels like a lot of wasted energy.
Yeah, we can do better.
You're saying thank you.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting movement in that we're all doing a thing, but there seems to be some uncertainty on what exactly the thing is. Like, you know, each training company has a different idea of the steps. We've got a different thing that we do in the authentic relating trainings we do. And so, like, I think the first step in this is just getting clear on what is this to us and what are the crucial pieces. And I don't think there has to be just one view on it or just one piece, but it's kind of cool that we've got this, we know it works, but we don't quite know what goes into it. So that's the intent of this little bit.
Like if this one.
Huh?
Keep going.
So I'm going to summarize with just two phrases. One of the words is presence, bringing like focused attention and presence. Another one is acceptance, which is just welcoming whatever is arising.
Okay. Acceptance and welcoming. Go ahead.
And the other one I would phrase is deep truth, access, deep truth of yourself or the moment.
And what did you get about Lindsay? What did
What did I get about Lindsay? I got that she's committed to growth, that she's in this work so that she can grow and be more connected to what's really true about her.
Should we listen, Chad?
I was listening.
Do you have anything to add?
Yes. I'm sharing about what Jordan talked about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that the essence of it is love.
No.
Oh.
I love you. Yes.
Along this track, I'm not sure if there's more to share. You talked about that being a big component of that being that complete acceptance and welcoming of whatever it is in anybody. But I really enjoyed the piece about that AR and circling are both lovely and powerful and different and have different applications depending upon the context. They both bring these but in different ways and are useful in different ways.
Okay. And what did you get about Jordan?
He's shiny.
This guy.
Love seems to be a big deal for Jordan.
I want to throw a marker at him, but it's out of love. I may need that back in a minute. Okay. Which of you is listening?
No, I was.
Yeah.
It's about seeing the other person and seeing ourselves. Yeah. And when I think I'm gonna put like a discovery piece on that.
Totally.
Yeah, discovery. I'll just say discovery.
And just a curiosity, like, to each of you, what does that discovery feel like?
Does it feel like? For me, it feels like a flower blooming in the sun.
For me, it feels like seeing behind the costumes and the mask, both of self and other.
To me, that actually also connects to this. Something beautiful that Guy, has talked about is like this feeling of like pulling back the curtain and peeking at reality. And what did you get out of that?
That she is truly inspired and on fire about this. I'm going to use it to this unveiling of humanity. Giggly, inspired.
Shocked.
But sometimes it doesn't feel good, and that's good too.
Feel, maybe,
we think
maybe
it
like,
doesn't feel, it feels good in a new way that we don't recognize it. Is what I would
Yeah.
say about that.
I actually want to keep
my
those.
bodily emotions so bad right now.
Yeah.
How about feels alive?
Down.
Feels alive.
Yeah.
Okay.
It feels.
Yeah. Feels alive. More, yeah, like more space to be in touch with reality.
Yeah, exactly. We do.
How do we do this? Okay.
I want to say more space to be reality.
More space to be.
I want to strike out the end and the end.
Alright. Steve, do you sure?
Yeah, I mostly, we didn't quite follow the format, I was just really getting a well, so, remind me of some of the context of what, I wanna I feel like I have some good things to share, but I need a little clue into
What we're trying to do is define what it is that we're doing in this building this weekend, basically. Like, what is our movement doing? How can we pin it down some way? Or define the outlines of it so that we understand it?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, I was listening and reflecting, I was talking with Eric. I feel like for one, there was an intention for me to actually attune to what is it like for you. So that there was an underlying sort of orientation towards I'm shifting from my normal mode of operating to being receptive. And I think that's kind of some of the mystery of where the dance of circling occurs, is that sort of, that we are kind of setting a context that's outside of normal operating space, where we're like getting things done out in the world. And I know for me, it can be hard to slow down out of like kind of linear getting things done mode. And with Alexis and I, it's been a practice of, we both have very full, busy days, and sometimes we're connecting really late at night after everything, all the dust is settled, and actually how to like shift out of the doing mode into the being mode. So I think context and warm-ups, so to speak, to the space and attunement, it's like a big component of what makes, relating authentic other than strategic.
I like that too. Authentic knowledge.
It's a nice paradox, like slowing down the moment, but speeding up development, or like, I feel like a conversation that if we were talking content might take us like an hour can happen in like 30 seconds.
You don't want to go fast, you gotta know how to go slow.
I think that when the relating is more strategic, there's sort of thoughts and mental, structures that are trying to be communicated. But when you don't have the context of connection as a group, everybody can feel a little protected. And all that information is having to come through the mind. But when you're connected and you have your feeling centers open, and somebody's communicating something and you're more open, then there's a lot more room for information to strike you. And I think that kind of speaks to what you were just saying, is like how an hour's worth of sort of mental conversation can happen in 30 seconds. You can just grok it.
Use so much more of the whole system to communicate and receive.
system, yeah.
So,
What I'm getting from a lot of this is that there does seem to be like a lot of commonality between people's perceptions of what it is that we're doing here. And there are probably things in the periphery that speak to people more than others. You know, like we have a wide range of perspectives here, and some things seem to fit and some things don't, depending on who you talk to. And there's like this core, but like each one of these is not like a technique. It's like, okay, you think that it's about the whole system and being authentic rather than strategic. Well, name 10 ways that you would strategize to like make that happen, to create that. And then if you name your 10 ways, then Kat's 10 ways are going to be different than that.
Okay.
And
Sorry. Sorry. No.
Better.
That's
Kat's ways will be much better as well.
I think
But-
you're biased.
But the point is that it's possible. Like maybe some of Kat's ways are actually better than some of your ways. And so the idea of open sourcing is like not letting your way and Kat's way be siloed. Letting you get the best of your ways and of Kat's ways. And
Vice versa.
Pardon me?
And vice versa.
And vice versa.
Yeah, I'm part of the big reason I came to this particular group was the idea of open source. I was having a lot of conversations about that, yes, last night and the night before in terms of circling. And I agree, I think that being able to have some sort of an open source kind of body of distinctions and then how you apply it, like your method of applying it, my method might be totally different, totally valid, but we're drawing from the same sort of code base, you know, of language and culture.
Even more exciting than like whose way is better and taking pieces. It's like when you it's like the union of the two, or like what is created from the different ways having exposure to each other.
so let's actually jump, just in terms of time, let's jump into it, because like we could go into this like all day. So like what is open source and how have we been doing it and how can we do more of it?
I just wanted to check, does everyone who's sitting right now have like a concept of like open source software and like know what we're talking about? We're talking about open source.
I do. I just want to. I think that we should speak to that, so that because I think there are a couple of different ways of looking at it.
Got it. Okay. Well, at its core, open source is a software thing. It started with software, and the idea was that like all these people were building software, and basically they were building the software, and then they were releasing it for everyone to not only use, but also potentially modify and like create their own thing out of it as well. Like it's this radical openness, and the phrase that they use in open source is that it's free. Like the software is free, and what they mean is like free as in speech, not as in beer. And like it is literally free as in beer most of the time, but what they actually mean is that it's free as in speech. Like it doesn't belong to the person who wrote it. It's just this thing that exists that now everybody can use and modify and riff off of.
I'm so confused about free as in beer. What?
You have to pay for it or not.
Oh, I get it.
Like,
When was
beer can be
free?
free, but it
Got
can't
it.
like embody
Got it.
freedom.
Totally.
But software
I'm with you.
can embody freedom. And
Right over my head.
so what we're talking about here is putting what we know of our movement out into the world for everybody to use and for it to be free as in freedom.
They can access it from anywhere, any place, without
That
charge.
you can access it, that you can build off of it, that you can modify it, and in that way, and maybe not. Maybe sometimes with open source software, you don't actually even use the software. Like I'm an engineer by trade, and sometimes the way I use open source software is I go look at how they did something that almost has nothing to do with what I'm doing, but just like seeing the way they did it, seeing the art that they brought to their software, I can transmit something from that into my own. And so that's kind of the ethos that we're trying to bring into what we're doing here.
And this actually, like, open source works particularly well for the authentic movement because what we do is so experientially based. It's not so much about the information, it's about how we're applying it with each other. So there's not a lot of downside in my world to actually having the information shared. For instance, I spent like most of the last couple of years putting together a manual of like all the authentic relating games that I'd heard of or could think of that now different communities are using and modifying in different ways, and it's coming back to us, and like all of a sudden there's this database of games, but the application of them are things that each of us are trying out separately.
Yeah, and that could be seen as, like in a different universe by a different group, seen as some like proprietary information that we need to like protect and somehow monetize or something like that. And I think the implicit context here is there may be a fear in the community, like if I build something, or if I have some information and then I give it away, well then I can't make a living at it anymore. And we think that that's not true. We think that that's false.
Yeah. I think we're blessed to have had the open source software movement before this because it maps so well to what we're talking about here.
Totally.
Is the first thing I want to say. And the second thing I want to say is I think at this moment, the greatest benefit from us open sourcing everything is that the people who already have experience with facilitating and using it, it breaks down those silos and cross-pollination happens. And there might come a point where a great benefit comes from just the general public being able to access it, but I'm just saying the greatest benefit at the moment is breaking down those silos. And we probably need more and more refinement to get it so that somebody could just off the street download things and really get something.
Sure. And it may never be that.
It may never, because it is so experiential. But I still see a huge value just for the silo breaking down and cross-pollination, even if that never happens.
And you know, I'm prepared to like defend my position here, but I'm getting the sense that you guys get it. Yeah, obviously.
So
Yeah.
Cool. Great.
So I guess we can go over a little bit of what we've been doing to further this movement. Actually, I wasn't planning on giving this talk, but I met with Kendra Kunoff, who has been involved with the authentic movement pretty much like since the early days of it, and she was looking at like what I and we have been doing in the Austin community, and was like, that's like the thing that you're doing that's different, and that seems really important. That like you've got this really solid eye on open sourcing, and so at her inspiration, I wanted to bring this here because it seems like an important piece.
Yeah, and I've heard some mention of the Circling Alliance. You know that there's kind of a desire in some of the originators to create a council of circling experts in the field. And I would imagine, have you guys discussed that with them yet?
I haven't heard about that, but I like it.
I think that what you guys are picking up on is just a general, like, I think what's alive, I was thinking about it totally separately a couple of days ago, so.
I'm going to speak for
Yes,
Sarah
time is coming.
because we've talked about this extensively, like we super duper agree with you. And the thing is that what we've noticed is that there's so much willingness and so much energy, and it's just a matter of like somebody taking the reins and making it happen.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to do the actual things.
So this is like where we've come up against, which is the things that we've done over the past couple years. And I'm gonna flip this board so we can, I don't know if I can flip this board. Is it flippable?
Yeah, kind of.
Sweet. We're gonna somehow make that work.
Thanks.
Okay,
You're
let's figure this out.
You guys talk.
Okay, thanks. Just wanted to make sure I'm alive on that. So the things that we've been doing are trying to collect as much as possible the different games and practices and flows and sentence stems and all of this stuff that we've heard about. And for me, that's also included trying to write a manual on how to create authentic community, to spread that, and then training facilitators so that they can start like bringing this up. So like, how do we seed that? And then collaborating like on my end, like, you know, sending my course plans to Porcelli and Wouter and get like seeing theirs as well. So there's like been internal exchange, and then talking to the different authentic community leaders around the world to see like, what are you doing? What are your communities like? What's worked and what hasn't? And like I said at the beginning, one of the things I'm finding is that we're facing remarkably similar problems a lot of the time, and we're even solving them in pretty similar ways. But what I got touched into from those calls is like, oh my God, like, it's really hard to be doing this. To be kind of pioneering something new, and to not feel like there's a lot of people around that are really getting how to do it.
Yeah. To me, it seems like a really worthwhile thing because ultimately we're all on the same team, and the movement of more authenticity in the world benefits everybody. And you know, if you have a program that you're leading based in this whole universe, and you're doing a great job, well, people are going to hear about it, and you're going to fill it. And you know, so it helps promote quality. You know, and I think the idea of you know, sharing course materials and sharing basically set in stones and all that kind of content, you know, is definitely really useful. And what I was wondering is, like, in open source, sometimes when somebody like adds a part to the code, they're like contributed by so and so. And do you like note sources, like when you're creating manuals, like I got this from the Boulder Integral Center.
Yeah, I mean the main manual that I've made that's available to everyone, the GameStock, has all the communities and the contributors listed at the beginning of it. And as soon as I get around to it, we'll have links to the websites as well.
Maybe not one by one. Like if I heard Decker do this one.
It is that way.
It's like the communities and the individuals are all listed at the start, and then in the notes after every game is listed where I heard it or got it from. So yeah,
That is beautiful.
and that's part of this as well, is like with open sourcing, it doesn't necessarily mean that credit goes away. And in fact, like one way that this can benefit all of us is, you know, for me, like nobody knew about the Austin community before we started putting out this open source stuff, really. Like people knew that we had like a lot of people down in Texas, but we're not the biggest community. But what we have been doing is really spearheading the idea of sharing information. And to me, that's the reason that we have been invited to the summit. Like that may or may not be accurate, but that's what I've been most committed to and what I see that we can offer. We've got like a ton of enthusiasm and are willing to try things out and see if they work or not.
Not only enthusiasm, but also willingness and ability to create structure around things that so far have been fast and loose. And the structure is going to be, we hope, one of the ways that this information ultimately gets organized and disseminated. So
yeah, one of the things I wanted to say was that with the open source software, what's present that I think maybe still being formed to some extent here is that, well, there's software languages, right? Right. So there was a common base for, hey, you create this piece of code, then I can use it over here because I know that language and I can read it and understand it. And so I think that's one of the reasons why this summit is so powerful, because it's really the beginning of the formation of that clear language. When you say this, we can see eye to eye now. And so you sharing information is getting it out there, and we can see that that you're forming kind of a knowledge base, really a language base. Because that language base is encoded in the things that you're snatching and piecing together.
and it's a living language because people are going to be contributing to it.
There's new
And it
codes
doesn't
and
all
so
have to
forth.
agree as well.
It kind of brings up a cool idea. I don't know if you guys are talking about eventually like the global platform, but
We'll get there.
when we have a strong structure, like there's a wiki, not just a doc,
Yes.
it'd be awesome to have like a language section where it's like,
Definitions.
we made definitions, but also the joke, yes, shit circlers say,
Yeah.
where it's like, this is what grok means.
Yes.
This is what,
Right. So what's really powerful about that is that even if people don't know the shit circlers say, if you just gave those phrases to people and you unleashed them on the planet and people started using them in their conversation, It's gonna change
Even
what
that.
happens and what arises, because the thinking and the feeling and the love that's in the words they use is there. They don't have to know any of the other contextual pieces because the language carries the context with it. Or it will carry a context and they'll overlay whatever they want. That's how language works. So
Yeah.
just getting that language out there.
What I hear is like some of our languaging, our community's languaging, has like an implicit to the structure of the language itself has like presence and acceptance and owning your own experience and like as part of the package.
Right.
And so if other people began using it, even if they didn't get the historical context, they would kind of be suddenly
That's
shifting people's mindset.
That's shifting the globe right there.
That's right.
I'm pushing this and I want to bring it back a little bit just because we only have a couple of minutes left, which is our question now is the only thing we need is initiation energy, an idea of how to best form like a way to start making these connections and sharing the information, because the issue that we're running into is simply I can think of like a million ways this can look and we don't necessarily have the manpower to make it happen. Or
We definitely don't have the manpower.
right, so it's like, I've got, for instance, this 15 different interviews with different community leaders that are sitting in my Google Docs because I don't have any time to organize and actually like collate that and put the answers together and then put it out to the community. So things like that, like what systems do we need and how do we gather the people and open source like actually putting the systems together? Because we've been trying to figure that out individually, and to me this summit is like a perfect opportunity to look at that question.
I've got a couple ideas really popping in mind. I think that the open source idea is key, because it like people are willing to give their time to projects that they feel are like out of the corporate capitalistic model, like that's like for the greater good. So I think that is a key part. But what I was really reflecting on while you were talking is, and I've been reflecting on this entire summit, is I think the language you're talking about is it's about a transformational culture. And these are the underlying concepts and worldviews that are definitely common to circling, but it's broader. Like people that are working with a guru and in yoga ashrams often are using very similar language of taking ownership, expressing empathy, and there's definitely differences, but I would think that if you could find enough, if you could take it out of the whole using the circling word, throw that out, and just somehow get broader into really wanting to map the phenomena of transformational culture, I think that you're going to draw from a much wider base, and the fact that you're open sourcing it, you would bring in lots of enthusiasm from maybe around the world, and then allowing, here's what the freaking ashram culture's like, I mean, and here's what the Integral Center, and here's what,
I really agree with you about kind of stepping back from circling as the thing and seeing what it is in a broader context. We Connection Core talks about that a lot, and about integrating things like what does the yoga ashram have to say, and integrating that, right? Integral psychology.
I mean, I'd like to say one more thing which I think is really useful to look at. I imagine some of you have done some of the landmark education programs, and there's pros and cons of that whole phenomena. But one thing that I think is powerful that they do is that they create this transformational culture, and it's got certain kind of cult-like aspects, which is like you got to keep involved. They're the only show of town, sort of thing, and that's what makes it not work. But the idea is that you have this community that's using kind of a similar language base. And, I think that if there's a way to sort of unite all these different.
If you had to choose one thing from Landmark that you would like want eat their brain about, like take the thing and use it in our broader culture, then what would that one thing be? Like, what is their superpower to you?
Well, that they're not watered down by green meme idealism. And in that I mean like try and like they have a business model and they have a yawn. And I don't think that I think the solution is an integration of open source and for-profit, not for profit and for profit. The not for profit is holding the whole of this culture, the games, open sourcing all this stuff, and then the for profit is like the applications. And having the applications, the Aletheas, the trainings, but the not-for-profit is a place where you can find out about all of them, and there's articles about all of them, so you're supporting the culture of transformation without trying to lump the two together and saying, like, if you want transformation, we're the only show in town, and they try to kind of coerce you into, like, not leaving, and all that kind of weirdness that was more cult-like. And so I think that the fact that they have a strong business edge, and they fill their programs, and they have decent prices, and they're all over the world. Yeah. That's what I'm really looking at.
I don't want to get too much into it because of time, but I just want to bookmark that I actually disagree about opening and like including all the transformational culture. I think that the focusing on a niche, at least at first, is more powerful. But we can connect on that afterwards.
To me, they seem like both can exist. And I get really excited about that, and then I also get like a little bit of like, ooh, when am I gonna find the time to do that?
Yeah, but I think we've already done it though. See, I think that if you think about what culture is, really at the roots of culture, it's the language.
Yeah.
It's the language that carries it.
Right.
There are people who are speaking the same language.
There's dialects in different places.
Right.
It's the same language.
People think that creates a shared platform. So that transformational language is already brewing, and you're bringing it together, all the sentence stems and the way circular, that stuff is there. In the same way that there's software languages that enable the open source. Without the software languages, there would not be any open source possibility.
Right.
So it seems like it's important to at least have an eye out for, are we putting the cart before the horse or not? If it's really about language and we're really looking at building a world transformational culture, then language is where our biggest lever point.
So my question is like, how do we get these common languages and these common ideas in the same place? What do we do to create these systems?
The first thing that comes to mind is the easiest system is what if we created, I don't know, I'm going to toss this out there and maybe we'll trigger something else, but if we create a transformational channel on YouTube, and all the games, those kind of games are just being put out there, and people were just seeing it, and they can start modeling the language, and there's some way for people to actually understand there's a benefit coming from it. Just taking advantage of the existing system that's out there. Okay. People would upload, and then there's a tagging, kind of a categorization system. I imagine you may have done that in your manual already. Then all of a sudden you've got something brewing that people can tap into and just all the user content generation models that are out there. We could take advantage of all the social media channels and just have this is for transformation. People are in the community. Maybe it's a curated community to begin with, because I think about how language is created, and this has been something that I've been always curious about, how words get formed. And I imagine that if you had a small clan of people together and someone came up with a new tool, or two people came up with a similar tool, and they were like, I'm calling on this, and I'm calling, and someone was...
I'm enjoying this, but I'm getting a little bit lost, and I want to stay, I think, on topic with brainstorming, just because we don't have a lot of time together. So I love the idea of YouTube channel and social media.
Look at Wikipedia for stuff.
Yeah, we got
The
that.
focused version of.
Yeah, if you
Well, I don't mean just a wiki though. I'm I'm talking about Wikipedia has a whole model. They have reviewers and like.
What would you write down if you had a marker?
A Wikipedia with a focus on transformational information. Like Wikipedia is just like everything, but this Wikipedia would just be like just transformational stuff.
Transformation-pedia? I
Transformation.
can't think of a way to make that sound
Transpedia.
good. Transpedia! Transpedia.
Wikipedia. Sorry.
I'd also be really curious, like, I could think that certain university programs and doctorate students that are in sociology would be really interested in mapping the phenomena of transformational culture and its emergence. And if you could plug into something like that, then you could actually get some people that are really interested in actually doing some work on it, and maybe
anthropologist type.
right. And so it's more about you could even just connect to them, and they could learn from you, and work to document the phenomenon, because it is ultimately in history books going to be something that's studied, and we're trying to study it as it's happening rather than 100 years from now.
To consciously create it.